T-minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Launch Sequence Podcast. This is going to be an interesting talk, folks. I'm not even going to do the whole preamble. Listen, I brought in Grolo, okay? We've talked several times throughout the year. But earlier this year, he made a big statement. A statement about Star Citizen being potentially a game for everyone. I'm going to put it in quotes because, there's caveats. But it's an interesting take because I think this is a game a lot of people have considered to be pretty niche. Even some of the design that we're seeing right now points to a game that's more focused on consequence and maybe the kind of drawbacks that people don't look for in casual games. But everybody can admit that the game feels like it's going for a more casual audience than maybe you would have assumed 10 years ago. So I brought in Grolo so we could talk about what a game for everyone looks like, why Star Citizen might actually work out for a lot more groups of people than you might be considering, but also why it could be losing a little bit of its identity in that journey. We're also going to talk a bit about instancing because that's a big part of, I think, the way that this game is forming and just the general casual nature of some features. Casual. I say that like it's a slur or something, but I'm actually a casual gamer. Grolo, thank you for joining me today, dude. How are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back on the show.
Of course. Merry Christmas. Wait, I got to get my Christmas hat, dude. I didn't even realize I don't have it. I am going to get that. But thank you so much.
But I got the tree at least.
You got the tree. That's good. I mean, my tree's not really Christmas, but there is a hat up there. That's not mine. That's the tree's. I can't steal that. So I'm just going to jump straight into the topic at hand because we got a lot to talk about today. And it's early in the morning. So, it's just how we do. How has Star Citizen been treating you lately? It's 4.5. Is in PTU. 4.4 is live. Nick's just came out. What are your feelings?
I feel like it's been the best year ever. We're in there playing all the time. We talk about it all the time, but I just can't believe we're having like 8-hour sessions in the verse with no real hiccups. I would say 4.4 was a little bumpy for us, but still, if you look back and you compare it to a year ago, like these bumps are nothing.
Yeah, it's weird how our expectations change because we very quickly went from just wanting to get any sort of reward in the game to being annoyed with what kind of rewards you're getting in the game. And it did not take long, but it is nice how much the quality of just the general being in Star Citizen has improved, even though it's still not great. Still plenty of problems, and I think everyone could admit that. But it's been nicer. I agree. It's been a busy year too. What has been your favorite part of the year so far, or I guess at all?
It's it's been like a double-edged thing for me because a lot of the content that's been coming out hasn't been like my cup of tea. I'm definitely here for the sandbox and the sand, and there's been a whole lot of this mission-oriented, story-driven content coming out, which is fun for me to see once or twice. But then it's like, okay, I'm ready to go back and hit some rocks or extract some more now, or But what I have appreciated has just been the uptick in playability, reliability, stability, and the way that has attracted new people into the game. I'm playing with different people today than I played with 6 months ago. There's just been a steady influx of new people, and that's been amazing.
Yeah, that has been nice. Last year was a little bit of a slowdown with new players, but I think that's coming off of 2022 and 23 both having very high amounts of new players. This year feels like it ticked back up a bit, and yeah, the biggest thing I see people saying when they come back is like, oh, I jumped back in and like I expected to do my normal 2 weeks, but there was enough content and the game wasn't crashing so much that I wanted to sign off in 5 hours. So I've actually been playing on and off every month. A lot of people that I used to talk to who back in like 2021, they were like, I'm coming back when the game's finished. Because, people, the game was going to be finished in 3 years. They are now coming back and they're like, it's good enough to play. That's not a high bar, and I don't think anybody should be satisfied with that. But I think it's definitely a good direction for them because they've felt kind of directionless for a while. Outside of like, pushing towards server meshing and those things, it gameplay wise, it has always felt just kind of like a mishmash of features getting dropped in, right?
I completely agree. Whenever I joined, it was not clear to me what direction the game was going. All I knew was that this game has great bones and it could go a lot of great places. But then,
I'm sorry, this hat's kind of blocking my ears a little bit. I swear you just said this game has good buns. It's like
bones.
imagining Star Citizen with like a nice butt.
I said bones, but either works.
Yeah, it's both foundational.
But now it's very clear to me. Like if somebody asks, like, what's this game going to look like eventually? We have a pretty good idea now.
Yeah. So I think that swings us quite nicely into today's topic. Is Star Citizen a game for everyone? Is a wide-reaching question. I would prefer to start with asking a question of like how you got to talking about that concept.
It's been on my mind for a while. The first time I ever vocalized it was the last time you and I got together on this show, I think. And then of course I did that video a month or two ago specifically on that topic. But yeah, it's been on my mind a while just because of the breadth that Star Citizen brings. It's just been so unique. I mean, you know me, I've got a long history in playing a whole bunch of different MMOs, and none of those MMOs offer just kind of all the depth in so many different categories. Like if I want to go mining, like it's a whole game loop. You know, if I want to go run missions, that's a whole game loop. And both of these things have a very high ceiling before you feel like you've become an expert at it. And so I got to thinking on that, and I got to thinking, and then Chris did some various talks and some appearances. Another one that really stuck out to me whenever he appeared in China, that bar citizen in China or whatever, and he was on the stage and they asked him the question like, "Are we going to get farming and fishing?" And he was like, "Yes," and stuff like that. And I know that's so far off, and it's kind of a meme almost. You keep saying yes to everything, but there's really no reason not to. And when you think about all these things coming together, you can't help but think like, who wouldn't want to play it possibly?
Yeah.
That's how I arrived there.
Yeah. I think I don't want to get too into it now. We'll get around to it, but I do think it starts to swing around the question of money. Generally, it would likely be the limiting factor. But Star Citizen has this unique way of attracting people from a wide range of games that you wouldn't really expect. What's the weirdest game you've heard somebody come from to try this game out? Or the most like distant, just kind of game?
Uh, I guess the strangest would be one I hadn't even heard of. Maybe somebody just joined the other day. They came from Project Zomboid.
Oh,
I've never even heard of that game.
That's I've heard about it more than I would have expected to, given the type of game it is. But yeah, I guess it's fairly popular. It's
What is it? I don't even know.
oh man, it's a survival game. It's like an isometric kind of top-down survival game. I'm gonna get roasted in the comments if I don't actually tell you, so I'm just gonna straight look it up. It's an open world isometric zombie survival game, but it's really well known, I think, because it's just freaking crazy detailed. You loot, build, craft, farm, fish, struggle to survive. Yeah, I think it's just
There you
really
go.
detailed. It's certainly, yeah, there's a lot of crossover there. I'm personally the kind of person who comes from single player RPGs. Anybody who listens to this, I've yapped about it enough. But like, I know, for instance, like people who even were working on the game came from games like DCS. Some folks came from like Assassin's Creed games. It's all over the place, which I think is a really interesting part of that whole "is it for everyone" dynamic, because a lot of times, um, if somebody was going to try and play like Eve Online, you wouldn't tell someone to go from like Stardew Valley to Eve Online. But I've seen someone transition from Sims to Star Citizen because
Exactly.
yeah, it's weird, and it's not exclusive to Star Citizen, but I do think the ability for games to do that is really cool.
You
So
mentioned DCS, and that was the video I was mentioning. That was a scenario I was kind of painting, and one I often think about. Like, say you're en route to a mission, and it's like maybe it's an FPS mission, and you're flying a drop ship, and you got your Call of Duty players in the back ready to go, but you have somebody that comes from DCS up front piloting, and you got it's just the mishmash of player type possibilities is pretty
yeah.
impressive.
Okay, so building off that, let's say that you do have that kind of setup, or let's say you're doing hardcore mining, right? You got your I don't even know. Is there like a space mining game that's been really popular? Trying to think if there's like a hard space
Eve
shipbreaker, but for
Online.
mining. Yeah, Eve Online. There's also another one, Space Miner, I think is literally the name of a game
Okay.
that's been being worked on. But just the idea that these people came from mining games, right? And they're like, oh, we love breaking rocks. Let's say they're Deep Rock Galactic, right? They're just rocking stone all day. Doesn't mean what I'm saying it means, but whatever.
Yeah.
The guy in the front is a Maverick pilot, like, right? He's Tom Cruise and freaking Top Gun. He just likes to go fast. So they're flying through canyons, mining stuff, and everybody's getting to have their fun. Um,
Yeah.
but what happens to those players when they meet that downtime where what they came to Star Citizen for isn't what they're doing anymore? Do you think that Star Citizen's going to have enough enjoyment in the other parts of the game for people to like still want to do it when they're not enjoying themselves? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's a really good question, and I I think that the level of fidelity that Star Citizen brings to the entire loop is what's going to really help there. For example, today, if I want to transport things, compare it to EVE Online. Like if I'm running transport missions in EVE Online, maybe I'm picking up contracts from other players and I'm running their goods from this station to that station. Um, like that's what I'm doing. I go into the station, I click, the box goes into my ship, I take off, I fly to the other station, I land, I click, the box goes into the station. In Star Citizen, you got everything in between. You have okay, I got to land in this hangar, and I got to open the back door, and I got to tractor beam a bunch of boxes onto my ship. I got to play some Tetris. Oh, I need to stop and take a drink because I'm getting thirsty. Okay, I got to get onto the ship. I got to take off. Oh, there's a storm. Maybe I got to deal with some. You know what I mean? Like this
Yeah.
whole, and I think that helps stretch out that gameplay that person's interested in, and I hope they just keep bringing more and more of that into the game, so that
But that also pushes it.
eventually we might have to go take a shower, use those bathrooms.
Yeah, see, but this stuff is also what kind of pushes it to be niche, right? You have
Yeah,
to both have those things in the game, but you also need to be able to let players who don't want those things still do things in the game, right? If somebody wants to join in Star Citizen and you're telling them, "Yo, this is going to be cool spaceship game, pew pew, you're flying around space, awesome trailers, all that stuff, Mark Hamill, woo," and then you get into the game and you can't do that. That's not great, right? You're like, "Out the wind's blowing me everywhere. The clouds are too thick. The freaking space stations tell me to fly so slow." And then you should come up with the option, well, okay, hey, you can go to this place and they allow you to fly like that. And I get that. You can always gate the content around, but now we get back to that money question. How much effort does CIG put into gameplay that may only get picked up by 2% of the community? And how do you justify the money going into that when everybody's screaming about the money that's already gone into the game?
yeah, that's a really good question. I think the answer is like this goes back to what I was saying about breadth, because you want breadth and you want depth. Like one or the other, and it's a totally different game. It's not Star Citizen anymore. And so
Yeah.
I think CIG finds itself in a position where they have to spend big on those 2% features, but they got to do it on a lot of them. And, in some ways, it's just going to be one of those over time things. We're not going to build Rome in a day. It's going to take a lot of time, but I think eventually that's where we're going to find ourselves. We're like, okay, this 2% feature had a ton of investment, and that 2% feature had a ton of investment, and pretty soon, okay, well now, 25 different things. And it's not like they're the first company to do this either. Blizzard took a lot of criticism back in the day because a lot of time and energy went into raids that only 2% of the population ever got to experience because of the skill cap at the time.
Hmm.
It's not uncommon.
Yeah. The question around gating content's an interesting one because it's so intertwined with what are the specific capabilities of the people working on the game as it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, that is the whole question around how this game manages itself over time, pays for renewing content to keep people entertained is a really interesting one that we're not going to get into today, but it is an interesting one. Um, so
I think you kind of need that gating. You need something for people to work towards. So it's
definitely,
it's 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 like a it can be viewed as a negative or a positive, I guess.
people hate it, but like also want it.
Yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
like? You ever just be struggling to get something done in life, like a big task in life, and you're trying to get it done, and you finally get it done. You're like, well, that's nice, but now what do I do? Like sometimes you feel a little bit less driven, you know? And
Yeah.
I think in video games, that's definitely the case. I mean, in video games, it's better to experiment with that. I know people want to get away from the struggle and job and life and stuff, and they want to go into video games to only have fun. But I think we could have maybe the occasional video game that goes a little bit more into mm,
Yeah.
the pleasure of struggle, I guess you could call it.
I completely agree. It's like friction of any kind. I think it's human nature that we want to see friction go away. Like friction annoys us. You get to a point where you've taken away so much friction that it's like, okay, well, now it's a lobby game.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot
So
of games go that route.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit.
Hmm.
We're going to keep talking about this idea of Star Citizen reaching into a new community. I want to talk about like the social interactions of an MMO um, are pretty important. You need good guilds, you need good guild content, you need voice communication, looking for groups, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, Star Citizen is lacking these things, but even given they could build them, uh, why do you think that they could reach a new level of people being actually social and interacting as if this was a Second Life rather than everybody holding themselves up and playing the game separately and just doing their thing? Like most of the players who play this game are going to be solo players, right?
Hmm.
So how does
Yep.
how does this set itself apart as an MMO?
I think it's the mundane, right? Like it's a lot of the stuff that the players in the game right now don't find all that appealing. It's the fact that you have to move a box, or it's the fact that you have to eat or drink or make yourself a meal, or it's the mundane things that really bring this, that are going to bring this universe to life. It's cool because you go to a shop right now, and we're so used to just going there and we search and okay, I need my A4 ammo, and I need my med pens, and I need this, and I need my cruise locks, and I don't know. At least for me, like it's easy for me to just skip over everything else that's available there. But when you start to look and you're passing these stores with racks of clothes, and you're looking in the terminals and you're seeing couches for sale, and there's like all this like actual Second Life stuff going on, and I don't know. It's easy for me to tune it out. I don't know about everybody else here, but when you really start to think about it, you're like, okay, when I've played games like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy or whatever, I think about the community that sprung up and what the community did. Or New World was another good one, and you got a lot of people that really love just those mundane things. Like, I'm going to go off here, I'm going to build my house, I'm going to decorate it. Oh, come check out the new painting on up on my wall, or I'm going to go fishing. We're going to get a bunch of people together. We're going to go on this fishing expedition. Just little things like that. They actually kind of represent a lot more of what's going on in your immediate surroundings than the people who are running the tier 10 dungeon. And so, yeah, I'm kind of meandering. My thoughts are kind of meandering right now, but that's what I think is going to blow this open. Um, if you can capture that kind of audience, which a lot of people are not really thinking about, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, a lot of people like going about their day-to-day life, but also many people want to do that in a closed environment. Like a lot of folks here, it's an MMO or that it's a multiplayer game and immediately, you know, sign out. They tune out. Many people will hear that PvP is an option in a lot of the game, and I do think this could potentially be changing the way that CIG is building the game. It's just the risk of what people think when they hear PvP. Um, but all having everything in the game is a good way to make people not want to be in there. So as an MMO, how do you get past that and become something that people want to jump into to experience that second life in space if they're going to be surrounded by a bunch of other regular, sometimes psychotic people?
That's a good question. But we've seen it before. I don't know if you played WoW back in 2004, 2005.
No, I
They
was
had
on
a mix of
Halo 2 back at
yeah.
that time.
But they have PVE and PvP servers, RP PvP servers. They have all kinds of different servers, and the 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 RP community was just as strong on the PvP server that I played on that it was on some of the PvE servers. But there was areas where you were safe, and I expect Star Citizen to do the same type of thing. And I think players understand that, will grok that. And as far as like what lures people in, is other people, and it's a tough thing, but you got to crack that snowball effect. You got to break past that like critical mass point. And I think Star Citizen stands a very good shot of breaking past that critical mass point where the gravity of the players in the game pull other players into the game just because of how foundationally different it's going to be from a technology perspective. It's like one of those things like when a new technology comes out and everybody, it's like smartphones, right? Like prior to the iPhone coming out, like nobody carried Trios or Palm Pilots. A few people did, but it was so niche. But then somebody comes out with this new technology, and it's like they add this level of polish to it, and then now there's nobody that walks around without one. And I think Star Citizen, what they're delivering technologically, has a good shot of triggering that.
Okay,
that's kind of where my mind's at. I don't know. Did I even make sense there?
No, you did. So then my next question would be, because I do think, I didn't play World of Warcraft, but the iPhone metaphor does stick with me. And I think it's timely because I look at the virtual reality field and I'm impressed by it. I'm the kind of person who absolutely would have a virtual reality headset, but they're super expensive, and I just cannot convince myself to get one for something that I don't know if I'm going to use a lot. The fact that virtual reality now works in Star Citizen, sorry, spoilers for anybody who doesn't know yet, Alpha 4.5 does now have native support for virtual reality. It's working pretty well. Frame rates are doing pretty good for people who have computers that can run virtual reality. And future plans are including not just hand tracking, but also full body tracking. So they're going deep into Star Citizen, and it's a big virtual reality enthusiast who's kind of heading that effort in the company. Do you think that could be a potential angle? Like, if Star Citizen is the premier showcase for virtual reality situation, from the machinima that might come from it to the RP to the community aspects it builds, do you think that is something that could create a sort of, I don't want to say World of Warcraft effect. I think that's shooting pretty high for Star Citizen, but the idea of it at least?
Maybe. I'm not a virtual reality proponent, or I'm not even really all that interested in it, but I know a lot of people who are. And but it's one of those things like you're just saying, like I can't see the appeal, but that's probably just because the technology is not quite there yet. But someday it will be. Someday it's probably going to be like this tiny little thing you can hardly see that just clips my glasses and boom, I'm in some virtual world. And at that point, I'll probably be super interested. But it's no surprise that it's coming. It's a surprise that it's coming in 4.5. I didn't know it was coming this soon, but ever since I started playing, I've been thinking like, wow, this game is completely set up for virtual reality. Just the way you interact with the world and the way everything, little things floating above interact here. Like it's just always seemed like that was inevitable, but Yeah, I can see that for a certain percentage of the population. And that goes back to your thing, like how much do you invest in the 2%? Even if the VR stuff only appeals to 2 to 5% of the population, it's important that CIG is making that investment and that commitment. And I think it'll definitely pay off because, again, the more people you pull in for the more various reasons, like the gravity
Yeah.
starts to build.
Yeah, it'd be a big deal if people go and they ask, "What's the best VR game I can get to
Yeah.
show off, the technology?" People say Star Citizen. What's the best spaceship dogfighting game that I could get into? People might say Star Citizen, or at least with multiplayer aspects. I know there's a lot of games out there, folks, but they could keep going down the list. What's the coolest planetary exploration game with multiplayer? Like if you keep topping all of those lists, you really start to spread through word of mouth, and that's the way to spread these days, right?
Yep.
But we
Exactly.
keep coming back to big this sort of dichotomy that Star Citizen has generally been believed, I think, by a lot of people to be a more niche game. And even some of the design down to engineering currently in testing seems to focus not on like specking people out like it's some really complicated simulator, but at least it has systems that you wouldn't find in a uh like a blockbuster, or you wouldn't find attempted. They would usually be broken down into something more simple, and that's at odds. They can't both attract a ton of people, pay for this massive budget to make this huge game that can support all these different types of playstyles, but also make it super niche. Could they?
I think they can. I think, and what is super fascinating, interesting to me about Star Citizen is they can layer on these complex systems that you wouldn't find elsewhere without adding a ton of complexity to the human machine interaction. So I was just talking about this, Ashes of Creation just shipped, and I was talking about how Ashes of Creation is a more complex game than Star Citizen, and somebody was like, "What? What are you talking about? Like Star Citizen is like, wait,
That's
but
war.
but but it's the way that the person interacts with the game. Like, and if I go play Ashes of Creation, there's so many systems I have to understand. I got to understand like how leveling up affects my 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 character skills, and if I want to craft, I got to understand like all the different skills and the trainers I got to go to, and like you know what I mean. Like just all these like things I got to know before I can do anything. But in Star Citizen, if I want to operate an engineering terminal, it works basically just the way it does as if I want to go to an ASOP terminal, right? I walk up to a screen and I hold F and I start navigating this thing. And if I want to hail or I don't know, it's all like that VR natural interaction with the world. Like it doesn't really
Yeah.
change. The way I'm doing things is consistent from thing to thing. Same with like combat. If I go to do combat in Ashes of Creation, well, I got this bar of abilities in front of me, and I got to understand what every ability does, and I got to memorize 22 keybinds. And in Star Citizen, I'm just aiming, and I'm pulling my trigger, and the actual interactions are simple, even though the world around you is deep. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it does. But I think you're still describing the difference between a game that's all the way at that one side of the spectrum, like I was saying, that is super niche and is pushing people away, and a game that's kind of like partially down that spectrum. Star Citizen, I think, is a game that shoots to try and, I want to say, do things in a way that is intuitive. Now they struggle with it, and that's why it's not all the way at the other side of the spectrum, because
Yeah,
it's certainly it's still sometimes it's unintuitive, but that's like different from the design of being more complex and not just like pick it up and go, right? You don't just jump into the Star Citizen spaceship and fly away like you would in No Man's Sky. And I
right.
think that depth, when you put that on everything, is what starts to grate on people. And then you combine that again with the idea that it is an MMO that allows PvP. And it's not so much that like people might try it out for 2 days and quit, so much it is people might just not try it. So how do you get people to try it, to experience the gameplay that they like without them getting dissatisfied with all the other stuff that's going on that makes it feel niche. I know I keep asking basically the same question, but I think that's like the real challenge that comes from this idea of bringing more people into the game, but still maintaining what gives the game its soul.
I think the answer to that is people. And that's why I keep talking about like this critical mass point that they have to reach to so that the player gravity or whatever you want to call it starts to pull more people in, because it's people that are going to keep people here. You know, I you go back to early MMO days, there was a lot of people that didn't understand what an MMO was at all, and just the sheer cliff face of that, and like looking at that, like, oh man, I got to go in here and I got to figure this out, and like that could deter a lot of people. But yet, WoW hit 11 million subscribers at one point. And why is that? Well, it's because there's people in there that I'm going to connect with, and they're going to show me the ropes. They're going to, hey, let's go level up over here, or oh, you want to do some crafting? This is how you get started. I don't think any game is going to be really good at onboarding somebody who is potentially overwhelmed by the systems of the complexity of the game. It's going to be other people that do that.
So you're telling me that when it comes down to it, the most important thing is that they give us good social tools.
Exactly.
Ah. You hear that, CIG? Please. No, I fully agree with that, though. I think that one of the biggest things, oh man, one of the biggest things I would love is just the ability to reliably know that I'm like talking into the game and the person in front of me is hearing me and I know that I'm hearing them back. I try this challenge every once in a while, 0 to hero, but with no ship. So basically you have to work for other people. Oh my God, have you tried working for other people without like any sort of trust system or reliable communication? Oh,
I can imagine that's a challenge.
it's like literally you could be in the middle of talking to somebody and then they just stop responding and you're like, did you crash out of the server? Is there an error? Is the system just not working anymore? I think that's part of the reliability and playability push this year is like, you can't even have systems like that if we don't know whether or not they're supposed to be working or if it's like by design.
Yeah.
I do agree with you though. I think the social aspect of this game, like if you build an MMO and then you build multi-crew spaceships and all this stuff, you should probably format your game so that people spend a lot of time doing that. And I'll admit the way that this game was initially formatted was not for that. Like what a lot of people got excited for in Star Citizen was not we're going to make it easy for everyone to party up and do things. I guess it actually kind of was because they had agent smithing and stuff, but it's shifted around a lot.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're going to lose a lot of those older backers because of that?
I don't know. I think a lot of the older backers will threaten to be lost. But where else is there to go?
Yeah. I mean, there's this new game I hear about, Star Atlas. It's going to kill Star Citizen, I hear.
Really?
No. There's a new game every year, Grolo, that's going to kill Star Citizen.
I know. I was just looking at one, the Verse.
Yes,
it looks
Verse
interesting.
Project. Yeah, it does.
It looks interesting, but like it doesn't look like a Star Citizen killer. It's a
No.
UE5 game. They're doing some interesting things, But that's why I say like where else is there to go? And it's the point I'm making that the game for everyone. And it's what Chris Roberts came onto the stage at Citizen Con Direct and was talking about, just the enormous opportunity that the player base is giving them to build this thing. Like I don't know. I don't know when the next time we will see that opportunity is, but I can't predict it's anytime soon.
It's almost an addicting conversation to have because it happens so often. Anytime you go on any article or video or thing where somebody makes a comment about Star Citizen, that's kind of like baiting people. They're like, oh, it's made this much money or it's taken this long or something like that. There's always just constant comments of people being like, oh my gosh, they're still making money. Why are they in the game? Why are people paying for this? And it's like, well, it's not.
Oh, I know.
It's because they can't. There's nothing else. They're always like, oh, this would EA would eat their lunch. Why aren't they then?
Right? Yeah. Where
Like
are
that
they?
was the whole Andromeda was lit. I have a graph that somebody made in 2016 that showed Mass Effect Andromeda's release killing Star Citizen's momentum. Like I would absolutely love if there were other games that were making games to compete with this. That's why it's cool that Verse is going on and
Yeah.
Space Engineers 2 is coming out and like there are other games that will offer similar experiences, but the fact of the matter is like people keep buying this game because it's can't find it anywhere else.
I remember when Starfield was going to kill Star Citizen. That didn't age well.
You know, there was a person, I'm not going to name names. I think it's rude. There was a person though in the Star Citizen community who made a video that talked about how Star Citizen was going to get killed by Starfield. Um, and I was working on a video the following year to explain why that didn't happen. It wasn't about him or anything. It was about just a general question that had been coming up. God, I made a couple videos for Starfield, so it just constantly was getting asked. So I made a video
Yeah.
to answer, and I went and looked for that video because I wanted, I wanted some quotes. I wanted to understand what the thinking was, and it turns out it's unlisted or at least deleted. Like there was definitely some very strong thoughts about that. I think that there are few enough space games that we can see quite a few new ones come in, and they'll all find their audience. But
Yeah.
I don't, I don't know, man. Do you really think that this game is going to be casual friendly?
I do. Again, it depends on how far you want to go, though. I think there's going to be ceilings. I don't think a casual player is going to be coming into this game and doing whatever they want. And I saw somebody in the chat talk about flying. I think, yeah, that's going to remain a challenging task, and you're not going to have your casual friend come in and just take off on a ship and go flying through space. That's going to be
Right.
something that they got to work towards. But can a friend come in and decorate their apartment in Microtech? Yeah. And they come in and maybe run some box missions around Microtech, do some deliveries for people. Yeah, I don't think the ceiling will be very high on something like that.
So then maybe
Um,
that comes around to marketing, though. Maybe you don't
Yeah.
market this as a spaceship flying game because a lot of people assume that, right? When engineering comes up as a topic, you'll see people come out of the woodwork saying everybody's going to fly their own ship, right? It's an assumption. Can they change that, you think?
Absolutely. I think they're going to need to. I think eventually your starter package, you're going to have options that are shipless. But that requires the game getting to a point where that it is nowhere near right now. I need to be able to go into Hurston and buy a ticket to Microtech and just be
Yeah.
transported over there.
Yes.
That's the kind of world we need to live in before we can go that route.
Yeah. That reminds me of going back to the 0 to hero with no ship thing is like even just if you find someone who wants to play with you, the whole chat's global, right? So you type in someone, hey, you guys want to play? They're like, yeah. Come to the ASOP terminals, and you're like, okay, cool. Where? They're like Levski. I'm at New Babbage, bro. And then you have to convince them to fly all the way to you because you don't have a ship instead of getting transport. I agree.
Yeah.
And there are like commercial passenger terminals at the spaceports,
Yep.
which is a cool foreshadowing. But how far away do you think we are from like a player being able to play Star Citizen reliably without needing a spaceship?
I think it's probably past 1.0.
Oh,
I can't
boy.
really predict. I can't predict how far out it is. But,
Yeah.
I can't imagine it's a priority for them for 1.0.
So you think they are going to focus mainly on that spaceship experience? I mean, that's where all the money's going, right? It's like,
For 1.0, I think so. But even like I mentioned that China appearance that Chris Roberts made whenever he committed to fishing and farming, and even that he was like, that's way past 1.0.
Yeah.
I think that 1.0 is really the MVP of this game. We're going to get what they more or less outlined, but there's so much more beyond 1.0 this game's going to grow into, and I think this planetary focused gameplay, the ability to play without a spaceship, I think all that is past that point.
Okay, so then let's talk about that because I think that's an interesting point for a lot of people. If like it's hard to imagine 1.0 even. A lot of people don't think we're ever going to reach 1.0, that there's never going to be a quote unquote release of this game. So I think it's even harder for most people to imagine what might be coming after 1.0. Do you think that I don't really have a question for that, to be honest. What do you think is past 1.0? You think they're going to try and focus on putting in new star systems, on building out the social experience? Like, what is the point of 1.0 if everything past 1.0 is there's just so much past it, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think in a lot of way, post 1.0 will be about expanding the bar. So like, if you think about like the type of players that are going to be drawn to 1.0, bar is the incorrect word, band. There's like a band that players are going to fall within that are going to be interested in Star Citizen 1.0. And I think everything past 1.0 is going to be about, expanding that in both directions, both the ceiling and the floor. Like we were just saying, like, can I play the game without a spaceship? Can I go? Can I buy my tickets? Can I farm? Can I make my little house on Hurston or Microtech and raise my my space cows? That kind of stuff. I think that's the kind of stuff that comes after 1.0. Fishing, farming, as Chris Roberts said. I think all that, all that, all that additional gameplay loops
The
that
farming.
and that kind of stuff is nowhere on the 1.0. If you go out to the project tracker right now and you look at the 1.0 column, none of this stuff's on there. So that's all post 1.0.
Yeah, but they do talk about farming a lot. And so I wonder if is that not on the 1.0 roadmap? I feel like they constantly are talking about, seeds are now as discoverable, harvestable. For anybody who didn't know, in 4.5 PTU, you can also scan and discover with your ship. You can scan and discover harvestables. You can discover caves. It even shows you potential sites for certain animals. So like,
Really?
it's interesting. But the seeds one is primarily interesting because it goes in line with, like, they talk about soil types and vegetation and water and seasons and how all this stuff progresses. And I do wonder, like, how much of that are you guys building right now in plans for farming? And what are the chances that they can actually build enough farming gameplay that someone can go off in some moon and set up a little outpost and do their farming, and that's Star Citizen for them? Like, you genuinely think there would be enough to be just like a space farmer out there?
I think so. I think that's what CR wants. I mean, he articulated very well in that chat that I keep referring to, that you're off and you're making your little farm and fishing establishment. He said you may never see another human. Like, that's what he wants. He wants that kind of.
Yeah, but Chris also
Um,
wants a coffee cup in the forest. It's
I know, I know.
so like,
But it's the old saying goes: if you shoot for the moon and miss, you're still among the stars. And I think that's exactly where Star Citizen wants to be. Um, so, and they certainly already have the geographic space for it. I mean, just in the planets
yeah,
that are in the game today,
yeah,
people have run the numbers, and I mean, every player has like 2,000 square miles around them where they might not see anybody. So, and if they keep adding star systems past 1.0, you had asked that, and I completely skipped over it. But yeah, I think absolutely more star systems post 1.0. As they expand this band, they're also going to be expanding the geography.
yep,
How many years after 1.0 till we have 10 systems, 20 systems? I don't know, but I think
yep.
it's coming.
And with the way that they're building planets now, they've got the new planet update they're working on. That will specifically determine where things grow, like very specifically humidity, soil type, sunlight, even the local plants around it will determine whether things grow or not. So that's kind of like a parallel to minerals, derelicts, resource spawning. If you have explorers that are looking for certain things, then they can pass that data on to people who are base builders, who can build bases for people who want to maybe craft pharmaceuticals and make all their sales that way. And as long as we can keep a player market where pharmaceuticals are selling, then you have people who need to go and actually farm that stuff. Same with like food. They
Yeah.
space cows being farmed and harvested. You could probably, I mean, I'm sure somebody's going to figure out a way to like capture and maintain baby Valacar and like harvest their goods occasionally for, like, there is a lot
Yeah.
of potential with the way they've built the game. So you're not wrong there.
Yeah, I'm sure the farming stuff even ties in with some of the stuff we're starting to hear about and see now. At they were just talking about that new ship and that ship talk episode they just did about that's going to
Oh
have
my
the
gosh.
mining
The
lasers
forge.
in the feet. Yeah, similar to the Pioneer, and so that's a whole nother system where you're going to have to be able to scan subsurface materials, which feeds into the stuff you're talking about.
That's crazy. See, I really wish that they would lay out more for us how they see this gameplay tiering and scaling. Because you're mentioning this is a game where people can hop in and they're going to be gated out of gameplay because they want more simplified gameplay. But I think, okay, for them, mining is as simple as getting a multi tool, exploring some cave that's maybe connected to an outpost or city that they go to, and getting some like
Mm.
low level minerals that allow them to craft something with iron. And that's satisfying because they're getting high level iron. They're exploring the local area. It's like, it's good if you're in that early stage. But then you get to the point where you have a ship that's boring it down into the ground. What's the progression to get between that? And I think we were only really starting to see that. I guess we kind of have that with mining, but
Yeah,
it
a little
still
bit.
feels crunched. And I wonder to
Yeah,
myself, when are we going to see the later stages of that sort of gameplay?
yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. But yeah, I definitely think we're starting to see that with mining and salvaging. You know, they keep bringing out new things. I mean, the progression that we have right now is you go from that hand mining tool, which is quite a simple system. To your point, like that's not a very high ceiling. Some new player could probably be doing that in fairly short order and feeling accomplished. And you go from that to maybe like a geo. You know, now you're in a mechanized suit
Yeah.
that behaves just like your mining tool, but you got a few extras. You get the backpack, and then from there you kind of progress to a rock, and then to a golem, and you know. So we are seeing the progression, but to your point, is it chronos? Yeah, maybe a little bit. And I have no idea what end game mining is going to look like. We haven't even
Yeah.
seen that yet, because like this whole subsurface scanning, that's going to be a whole other thing. And then you got the Orion. What the hell's the Orion going to be? I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like there's gonna have to be like resource spawn timers. So like the resources respawn on planets every few weeks or something, just to encourage people to move bases. It's like a lot of those details. And
Yeah.
we we talk about these game systems for years from like this broad perspective, this bird's eye view. And it's not until they actually come into the game or they're getting ready to come into the game where we start to get a ton more detail and realizations and stuff like that. That's what I feel like is happening with engineering right now. It's like they've had these plans for engineering, they've wanted to do all these things. Now they're dropping it into the game, and the reality is kind of hitting them in the face because for whatever reason, they don't want to get rid of the ability to blow up ships. I'm not sure if you've been following all of this engineering stuff.
A
Um,
little bit.
like they clearly don't want to get rid of the ability to blow up ships, but people are clamoring for it, and it does seem like over time that's what they've been trying to push is like blowing up ships is going to become much more rare. And so we can talk all we want about end game mining and how it might be complex and cool, but it's not until CIG actually starts showing us that stuff that we know if there's going to be that huge progression within these professions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I have not heard a lot of the ship blow up debate, but that's an important one. That's an important one. I think we need to get to that point. I did
Yeah.
hear some scuffle about like power supplies, and
Mm-hmm.
please don't make them easy to detonate or
Yep.
something.
That's it. That's it. You're onto it. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
this is another topic in the whole, is the game becoming casual or too complex? Like engineering's a big pivot point for a lot of people who think this is actually turning the game towards being for a lot less people. Um, Most people want to fly their spaceship and not think about components and repair and stuff like that. So we're talking about Star Citizen being more accessible and interesting to more people, but at the same time, there's a new gameplay system being dropped in that is literally making it more complex and that people think is going to kill the game for them. So how do you remedy those two?
But it's adding progression. Like I've had this conversation with countless people, and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to be able to fly my XYZ anymore. It's going to require crew, and I can't get a crew." And I'm like, "Well, fly a smaller ship." It's kind of like the mining thing we were just talking about. Like, how do you progress through mining? Well, I'm starting out with a hand tool, then I go to this, and at some point in your mining progression, you're going to need a team of people, right? You're probably not going to man an Arastra by yourself or anything much bigger than that. Um, and it's going to be the same thing in any ship. Like, okay, I start out with an arrow. I can manage an arrow.
But
I'm not going to need.
I
Go ahead.
I think no, I'm sorry. You finish.
No, I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, you start out with a smaller ship and you keep working your way up, but at some point, as you climb that that progression of ships that you're engaging with, at some point, you're going to need other people. I don't know.
I think the people who are more worried, though, are the ones who are looking at smaller ships and thinking they're still going to have to maintain them.
Hmm.
I'm, I don't, I do not fall in this category, but I understand the people who are looking at their Zeus, their C1, their Cutlass Black, their Hull A, and thinking to themselves, am I going to spend more time actually doing the things I got this ship for, or taking care of this ship? Um, and it's not the gameplay itself that could make this game not for everyone. It is the perception. It's for like what people think. They hear that the ship has a maintenance system, and then the first thing they see is people talking about how it's just like, oh, it's so much work and all this stuff, and they don't try the game, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you think, I mean, we've already seen that engineering has been scaled back a little bit. I don't know if you've heard the changes they made, but like for instance, relays no longer cut the hard power.
yeah.
Um and I think that's like one of the big ways they changed it. And they're continuing to kind of debuff the damage that's taken, but it is intimidating.
Yeah, I did a reaction to the SCL where they announced that, and it was a genuine reaction. I was watching it for the first time, and I felt bad because whenever they started talking about some of that stuff, I felt so deflated. I could not help myself. Like I couldn't help my face. I'm like, oh, it felt like such a walk back on what they had originally wanted. I wanted to see, hard power offs with fuse destruction, that kind of stuff. But I totally understand why they made the changes. Some people were telling me about these situations where like an arrow is or some small ship is could just take out a capital ship like that because they took out the right fuse, and of course nobody wants that. That's the exact opposite of where we want to go with engineering, in my opinion. So I totally understand it. But if they're walking it back to that point, and I also to your point, sometimes perception is reality, so it doesn't even matter so much if it's been walked back to the point where it's really not that problematic. Because if all your fuses can be blown and your ship is still operational, then what's I don't know what the concern is.
I mean, it's not great. I'll tell you that when I've been in the ship and I've lost a lot of fuses, but we're still operating, it's not a good time. It
Really?
starts to become very apparent how many power pips you need. Yeah, because it's also
That's
here's what gets me. People complain about the simplicity of using a beam, but I told you just one aspect of what's happening in a given second during combat, right? Is your relays are out, you lost power pips. In that same time, you're also worried about what components are taking damage. You're worried about what ship is outside of your ship potentially firing, right? You just saw a jump signature for a Polaris in the distance. Now you're thinking about that. You got an EMP ship potentially in your hangar bay. Does somebody get on on your ship, fly that out, and use it? You got a fire burning in a room. Do you vent that room? There's so many things going on that if CIG made everything complex and interesting, like people want for repair, it would get overwhelming. I think. I mean, it's pretty intense already, and so I do understand where they came from for the relays. But I guess then I want to ask you, like, do you feel like the change with the relays, it was really disappointing to you? Are those kinds of changes what takes away what makes this game special? Are you cool with them? Do you feel like they're doing a little too much of that?
when I initially heard the news, yeah, my first reaction was like, this is too much. But we're humans and we tend to overreact on those kind of things, and I had to take a step back and be like, okay, let me get my hands on it first and see how it feels before I judge
Yeah.
this too harshly. And so that's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting to get my hands on it. You're telling me that it's very noticeable whenever you don't have all your pips, and that's what that's good to hear. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, same here. I think we're kind of in the same boat. Like we just want to see some consequence and choice.
Yeah.
But like whatever they need to do to make it fun and appealing is a good deal. But there's definitely a line. Everybody's got their moment where it's like, okay, this has gone too far in the other direction. You guys are trying to do too much to appease casuals again, which is not as bad a word as I make it sound when I say it like that.
I hear you on the overwhelming thing though, and that's but I feel like that is definitely needs to be part of that progression curve where as you ramp up to bigger ships and larger crews, like you're going to kind of need this because at the same time you also have the other side of this debate, which is multi-crew is boring. You know, I just go and I sit in the turret and I stare into space for an hour.
Mhm.
So you know,
So
it's
that's where we get back to the question I asked you earlier, which was you can be in a ship, you can have great gameplay that you love, you could be the engineer, but once that engineering stuff is done in the ship, what do you do besides that? Right? Like we can have this perfect game and there's definitely a social aspect sitting in the ship chilling, talking to you with your friends. I do think that like the dartboards and the billiard tables and stuff in the ships will be yeah, usable at some point and there'll be entertainment, but it does need to be entertaining and not just in reality but in perception. You can't have this rumor that Star Citizen is the kind of game where you have 30 minutes of fun and then you sit around for an hour with your friends and wait for something else to happen. There's got to be kind of something to connect those moments. And I do think that they are there for a lot of us, but maybe not for, again, quote unquote, everyone.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I think all those little things are going to be critical to doing just that, to smoothing out that entertainment experience. So like
Yeah.
when I don't have to be sitting in the turret, I want to be able to go and hang out on the kitchen area and play a game of cards or billiards or darts or the arcade machines and the you know the larger ships or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's going to be important. But
Let's,
also, downtime is okay. You know,
downtime
I
is okay.
remember I remember like because we can also just get fatigued from not having downtime. I remember back to you know the older MMOs where we were running dungeons together, and it was pretty common for us to be like you know just standing around between pools, just kind of discussing. Oh, you know, okay, this next pool we're going to do this and we'll do that. And it's a very relaxed pace, and then you get to modern games, and it's just a blistering race through every dungeon because there's timers and there's all this other stuff, and and that pushes people away. Like there's too much engagement, right?
Yeah.
So even that's a balance.
We need that dopamine, dude. Because even it's crazy. I was sitting here as you were describing that, and even in my dumb little head, I'm like, okay, I would love to take it slow, but like, what am I? Is there more stuff in each place to do that makes that slow pace entertaining? And then I have to be like, no, stop it, stop it with your crazy hyper addicted head. It's okay to have empty rooms and places where you just walk through.
Yeah.
That's funny, but it's not just so you've been tying this idea of like the progression of difficulty and complexity mainly to big ships and multi-crew stuff. But what about for the single player going from early game to end game? Let's say like when players talk about this game is too complex, they are probably saying something along the lines of, I don't want to have to go pick up my gun and then pick up my ammo and then put them in a backpack and then put that backpack on and then get a tractor beam and then go to my ship and then load the ship and then, but first I had to load a vehicle and then drive it to the side and then load a ship. And then like, you know, there's a lot of, it's not so much the progression of the game, it's more so the actions themselves feel like they take a lot of effort. Um, do you think that there is a solution there for CIG?
That's a good question. I'm sure there is. I don't know what it is exactly. The whole pulling up a vehicle and driving it to the side drives me insane. We all
Oh
know
yeah, that's
they
gotta
are
be
thinking
fixed.
of a solution on that one. They're, you
Yeah.
know, we're either going to use the freight elevator or something else. I cannot wait because I remember so long thinking, man, it'd be so nice to be able to get my vehicles in my hangar because we were going to the moons to load vehicles, and then we finally get them in the hangar, and I'm like, okay, well, it's still more convenient to go to the moon. I'm still going to the moon.
Yeah, honestly, it's just so exhausting, dude, especially like if you have an extra large hangar or something and you
Yeah, which
gotta
yeah,
you gotta run like half a kilometer just to get to your little 5 foot long bike.
yeah,
Like you should
so
have given me the
annoying.
bike to drive out there. We used to have the PTV because we thought we would use that to drive around the big hangars to our ships, but now you got to use the hangar to get the PTV. It's just like, what's going on? But yeah,
Yeah.
that's just like a shortcoming of the development. And I do think the scenario I mentioned with needing to go pick up everything separately will be solved by suit lockers and loadouts and stuff. But
Yeah, that's where I think we're going, and once you, I'm hoping eventually we're able to say, hey, I want this on my suit locker, and then you pay the fee, and your
right,
ship
so
has that in its suit locker.
that's where I'm headed. There's a lot of potential for like tedious gameplay to be solved by currency or time. Not really
Yeah.
time. But like I think a good example of this is cargo loading. They want you to obviously load your own cargo if you're into that kind of thing, but also give you the option to auto load cargo. So, you just have a little timer, you pay a fee, and then the station loads it in your ship for you. There are a lot of opportunities for that. Um, you want to spawn your ship at a location it's not at? Don't claim it. Just pay a fee, and then somebody transports it there for you. You do the same with items. We talked about a passenger option earlier if you don't have a ship. Do you think they're going to start to do a lot of that kind of stuff?
I think so, and I think that's the right way to do it. I think having the primitive, tedious systems and then building upon that through automation or whatever you want to call it, I think that's the right way to do it. Like in the business, we call that fallbacks or escape hatches, or like if you find yourself at a point for any reason you can't pay the fee, or you're in some just edge case where like the pay for convenience doesn't work. Like you always have that. More foundational system to fall back on. Like I'm gonna have to go over here and I'm gonna have to do this thing and I'm gonna pick it up and I'm gonna put it in my bag or whatever. Like having that as our starting point is important, and I'm just layering on the convenience over top of that, I think is the right way to go.
Well, I hope we start seeing it more soon. I guess it kind of feels like with
Me
crafting
too.
coming in, they're stepping more in that direction. Do you think we're going to see crafting in testing this year like they said they wanted to?
It's getting pretty close to the end
It
of the
is
year.
very close. It is very
I don't
close.
know. I'll be impressed, but I don't know. I can see them the day before Christmas break pushing engineering to live and crafting to PTU, and then say see you next year.
Oh no, don't do it, dude. The freaking engineering to live seems like it's been enough of a challenge that they must just be all hands on with that. Like if engineering had gone into PTU the way that we saw it going to PTU and I was in charge of calling crafting for the ePTU the same month, as soon as it hit PTU, I'd have been like, nope, we're pushing crafting back. We need to focus on the engineering stuff. System's
Yeah,
cool, but it needs help.
yeah.
Another system,
I
go ahead.
I was just gonna say I haven't even put my hands on it yet. I'm kind of waiting.
That's a good call. Has your dog gotten to try
Sorry.
it? I love an excited dog. Um, let's switch to another feature that is interesting but might need some help. I think this is actually one of the biggest things that Star Citizen has done to signal that they do want to make a game for a lot more people than maybe had been realized. Now, the original vision for Star Citizen was basically just a series of instances and a whole bunch of matchmaking. Over time, the general idea of it started to shift into this sort of everybody's in the same world. We can all meet at everything and run into each other. People even had pride about the idea that they would stand in line waiting for a mission giver. Those were the crunchy uh, scope creep years of Star Citizen, we'll say. Now, it's quieted down a little bit over the last 4 or 5 years, but it's still been an expectation that server meshing would allow people to just kind of fly wherever they want, see the people who are there, and experience a very open game. Over the last year, they've started to introduce the idea of instancing being used for story based content, for mission givers, and for controlled environments where they want to offer a unique type of gameplay. This is obviously the kind of thing that's going to make the game a little more casual. Um, but it also, I think, in a lot of people's heads, also runs the risk of taking away what they thought of that makes Star Citizen special. You have a lot of experience in this kind of stuff, and I know you made a video about instances. So for the final part of this podcast, I just want to start to pick your brain a little bit about what you think of them including this technology, the way people feel about it, why their fears may or may not be warranted.
Sorry, my dog is going crazy in the background. Oh
He
man.
loves their instancing too.
All right, can you hear it? Is it coming
Uh,
through loud?
a little bit. You're good.
Um, yeah, I think uh, um, instancing coming into the game does not concern me at all. It's a very critical piece of technology that's going to unlock all kinds of player experiences that would not be possible otherwise. Is really what it comes down to. Um, I guess I guess I would kind of throw the question back at you because you might have a pulse, a better pulse on the community than I do when it comes to like what the concerns are around this. I mean, like, what kind of concerns do you hear whenever you're talking to people?
A lot of it feels, I think, focused on the idea more so than the reality. I think a lot of Star Citizen is, like I said earlier, engineering is a lot different in reality than what we've talked about.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think that a lot of it is about mm, just kind of the continuity. Um,
Yeah.
One of my personal things is I want to know that if I fly to a place, I'm seeing what's at that place.
Right.
I think it really takes away that immersion and that almost trick that you try to play on yourself that you're playing in a game world when you realize
Yeah.
that there are hundreds or tens, I don't know, however many other versions of that game world there are out there. You know, you look at the magnum opus idea of a virtual world for people, Ready Player One, and it's not like the main character was going to different worlds that all replicated spaces. He was his friend contacted him and said, "Hey, I'm on this world." He said, "Okay, I'm coming to that world now." It's great to be able to find your friend, but what if there's another person that could potentially be your friend who's fighting alongside him and you end up in different instances? Or better yet, what if your group of friends is fighting through this sort of semi-closed dungeon area and you say, "Cool, I'll meet up with you guys." You fly in to join them and it turns out that they're at the cap and the game spins up a new instance for you when you get there, so you can't jump in. And that they could also be saying, um, they could also say it's a soft cap. So like you're not necessarily going to start a new instance when you show up, but how far do they go with that? Do you allow 18 more people to join the group of 5 just because like they want to be in that instance? It's those kinds of questions I think that start to confuse people.
Yeah. It's like what we want meets technological limitations is the problem. And
Yep.
yeah, we all want this infinitely scaling digital universe where um, everything is everything exhibits that continuity that you're talking about. Um, and for a long time, I think people placed all their hope on achieving that because we haven't really gotten that in any game for very good reasons. But people
Yeah.
placed all of their hope on dynamic server meshing and server meshing. That was going to solve all of the scaling challenges. Um, but the reality is there's multiple ways of systems to scale, and dynamic server meshing really only addresses one of them, and that is the scaling out. It
Yeah.
doesn't address scaling in, and that's the problem that instancing or layering or whatever you want to call it. That's really the only option we have for scaling those situations, and I know that is not great news for people,
Yeah.
but it kind of is what it is until our technology advances. I don't even know how much further than it has to go, but
Yeah.
that's just where we're at.
This is this has been an ongoing conversation because obviously physics and all that kind of stuff, but there's some level of what if. We all know what if or imagine, I think is a better one. This game's used for marketing. Um I don't want to get into like the legalese of how it all works, but they've clearly led people to believe that the game is going to reach a certain potential. Sure, that's leading based off of your own expectations and what you want to do, but now that the rubber meets the road and they're starting to have to make concessions, it's now on the people, obviously levels of patience, maturity, and willingness to accept compromise or just be satisfied with what's being given. The reaction could be very extreme or not, but I do think that part of it is people feeling like, hey, we backed this because we felt like this was really pushing it. This was going beyond. This was doing the things that we hadn't seen before. And I think they still are, but that influences the way that people react to these kinds of things.
Definitely. Yeah. I can totally understand and relate. The fact is they are pushing a lot of boundaries that have not been pushed before. Dynamic server meshing is pretty amazing technology, and if only they could come up with something as creative for the bar, which is the example they give in what was that? That was Star Citizen Direct, right? Where they were talking about instancing a bar because you don't want any more than like 50 people in the bar.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it. But
And those were the earliest examples too. Those like when instancing was being talked about after server meshing was brought in as more of a concept. It was the mission givers that were usually used as like the first example of why that might happen. It's you don't want 50 people trying to meet up to see this mission giver who spends 2 minutes talking to every person.
right.
But another thing people are saying, this is one of the folks I've talked to about this thing, um, basically saying that like part of the appeal for Star Citizen for them was the inherent risk of going places and doing things and um, knowing that it might not be friendly. Not necessarily because he
Mhm.
wants to get into PvP, he doesn't like the combat, but just the tension it causes and the way it asks you to play differently. I do agree there. Um, but rather than saying my part, what's your take on that kind of pushback to instancing?
I completely agree, and it's something I struggle with too. Like I hangars is something that I kind of get hung up on, and it's also a place that we've been living with instancing for a while now. But you think back to like Port Olisar and some of the other places where you had the open air hangars and you could land, and there could be trouble there, right?
Yeah.
And there was something both annoying and satisfying about that you could land, you could walk in, you could look outside, oh there's my ship, oh there's somebody dropping a bomb on my ship, whatever. That was definitely it had its appeal, and now we land in a instance hangar that nobody else can get to, and our ship goes down, and what I mean, there's definitely something lost with that in my opinion, but there's things gained as well.
Oh yeah.
um
Yeah, and like optimizations need to happen.
yeah.
It's human nature sucks, but like you go outside to a pad on Port Olisar and you're standing at your ship waiting to get in. It's the tiniest little things that can make it different from an instance hangar. Like that person is standing 5 feet away from me, not moving. They won't respond. I don't know what their goal or objective is. I could open the ramp to get into my ship, but what if they start moving suddenly and they join me and then I suddenly have no way to get them out of there because we have problems with like the crime stat system. It's just like there's so many knock-ons to those sort of little things. I love Port
Yeah.
Olisar. I miss that place, but yeah, that wasn't gonna
Is
work.
I haven't even been to Levski yet. Is it anything?
Oh my god, it's so good. I
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I was Levski was cool when it was first in 3.0 or whatever it was, but no, it's way better now. I mean, the audio and sound design alone make it a lot more interesting to get to. But the views are good. It actually feels like you're in an asteroid field now. Um, the I don't like the transit system. The elevators are very annoying, but overall, it feels like it has a lot of space. Just like with a lot of
Does-
the other landing zones, it seems like it's a place that they're going to expand on. So,
yeah.
a couple points dinged off for not having a ton of things to do, but
When I
compared to the
first started
others, I
talking
think it's
about it,
interesting.
yeah, I was thinking it was going to kind of bring back some of what we had with Port Olisar. Is that the case or no? Does it have open
A
air
little
landing or
bit.
is it instanced?
It does.
Yeah.
It has pads, yeah,
Yeah.
and I've used them. I've seen people on them quite a bit. I don't know how that's going to be when the population starts to spread out, but
Yeah.
with the external freight elevators, with the borehole, which people fly through quite a bit, and with those open air pads or open vacuum pads, whatever, I do think that it does have a more community feeling. It probably helps that it's in space. So
Yeah.
everybody's flying around, feeling comfortable, floating in their ships, all that kind of stuff, which will only get more true as control surfaces come in.
Yeah.
So, do you think that games are ever going to be able to pull off this idea of a truly open world without the instancing and all this stuff?
Good question. um, yeah, I mean, I think the limits will continue to rise. Uh, I don't know. I don't know at which point. Like, I don't think we'll ever be able to be totally uncapped, right? I think there will always be some bar, but eventually that bar will be out of sight. How long it's going to take to get there, I don't know. And I think if any game is going to get there first, I mean, Star Citizen obviously has that ambition, and I think as the technology improves, I think they're going to continue to kind of push that bar, and they've already demonstrated that. I did a discussion a while ago on we've long heard this thing where people say by the time Star Citizen ships, it's already going to be outdated, and
Yeah.
I refuted that. You have like it's so easy to refute because you see the same thing in other parts of the industry. There's other products. There's plenty of products that we use that we've been using for 10 years now, and it does not feel out of date. And I think Star Citizen, there's no reason to believe it'll be any different. But for the same reason, I think that as the technology limits rise and some of these things, get further out of sight, I think Star Citizen will be in a good place to kind of push them and raise its own limits.
I agree. I do
It's
agree,
just,
but I don't know. I've definitely settled on the idea that Star Citizen is going to be a more compact experience than I had hoped.
yeah, yeah. It's in some ways. In other ways, I think they're gonna keep that magic. Like it's one of those. It depends. Like fleet battles, I think you're gonna be able. I think we'll be impressed with what kind of shenanigans we get into when it comes to like large scale fleet battles and stuff like that. But whenever
So
it
do
comes
I.
to piling everybody into a bar room for a birthday party, yeah, I think we're gonna be surprised at the limitations.
We'll
Like
see how
really, we
this.
can only get 100 of us in here.
Yeah, and we'll see how this goes with features specifically and how they change the game up to try to attract the largest amount of people while still maintaining the heart of what made this game complex and interesting, intense.
It is a tightrope they have
Yeah.
to walk for sure.
Final question that I want to wrap things up on.
Yeah.
CIG is a young company. I know people will make jokes all the time about how long this game has taken, but compared to all the other companies that are pumping out games of this size, they're they're fairly young. Uh, they're also, as much as people want to talk about how much money they're making, not making a ton of money for how many employees they have, and clearly have had to make some choices because of that. Do you think that they're going to be able to continue to attract more and more top talent that can really build complex content and interesting stories and quests and characters for this game? Um, Given not only how much money they're making now with the numbers they have, but also, as many people assume, when they do reach 1.0, maybe they're making less money, or maybe they can't sell ships as much.
I think they will because, well, first of all, their marketing department has proven to be world class. I, I I just cannot see them being in a position where they are not making a ton of money. And I think even without ship sales, I think I hear that often, but I think a finished game, Star Citizen 1.0, will stand to make far more than they did in early access selling ships. So I think we're going to look back and be like, wow, that really wasn't all that much compared to where
I
we're at now.
agree.
But the even more important thing than the money is the ambition. Developers are drawn to ambitious companies that are doing cutting edge new things. And there is no company out there in the gaming space that is more ambitious than Star Citizen. There might be one that I can think of that maybe is on par, but we don't really know. That would be GTA 6. They have a similar budget. I mean, they're over 1B, and but again, it's been kind of secretive, and we don't know how far they're going on the multiplayer thing. And the multiplayer thing is what makes all this hard.
Yeah.
So we don't know if there's anything close, and so for that reason, I think Star Citizen will continue to draw in very top talent. For the same reason, you go back 10, 15 years, everybody wanted to work at Google because Google was leading the charge, and people wanted to be where that was happening.
Yeah. And they're making a comeback now again. It's just a matter of time. They just see what's the new technology, and then we'll just chuck everything we can at it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they were down and out in the AI race. Not so
Yeah.
much anymore.
If only RSS readers were a top earner for them, maybe they would bring back Google Reader. Do you feel like they're doing top talent right now in terms of the content? Do you feel like what they're putting out is adequate for 1.0, kind of getting more into a deep game experience?
Talking about like the tech itself, like is you're talking about the quality of the tech?
I'm talking about like the format of the quests we're doing. Get key card, unlock this door, find this
Oh.
thing. Like the general, the Hathor, the ASD, the Onyx, the new Vandal Smuggler things, the mainline stuff they're doing. Do you feel like that is tentpole? That's kind of like the paragon of a quest that could represent the game, or do you think that they could be doing better with that?
I don't know. I'm probably the wrong person to ask that question.
Right,
I
you're a
hate
sandbox
Quest.
player. Yeah.
I hate the Quest. I don't. I hate Wicklow. I don't
Well, I'm
care
not
if I
even gonna
ever
ask
see
about
Wicklow
that.
again.
But that's Wicklow's kind of your kind of thing, no? I mean, I think with whatever they're doing with Wicklow right now, it comes off weird because he's the only one and the game's so limited, but his format seems like it's perfect for a sandbox player. You go out, you do all your stuff, you collect your things, and then you go to an NPC and see what they'll take.
No, that's not my cup of tea. No,
Okay.
when there's probably a whole bunch of different types of sandbox players, and maybe there are some.
Yeah, you're probably right about that.
I'm the guy that wants to go out and do the mining, and then I want to take the mining stuff and I want to craft something with that, and then I want to go build a base, and then I want to craft more stuff for the base, and I want to build an empire. Really,
your industry.
Yeah, and defend it. I mean, industry and security. I want people to come and try to take my base out, and I want to blow them up, and that's the kind of stuff. All like the player driven aspect is what I'm excited for. So when it comes to like, oh, I can go collect horns and sandwiches and turn them in and get a Polaris, that's not what I'm into. I'd rather go mine the ore to craft the Polaris myself than turn sandwiches
for Polaris. That's a good trade, dude. That's got to be a good sandwich. Well, how about
if I'm just comparing it to other MMOs, yeah, I think they're probably on the right track.
Okay. And how about the stuff you're actually interested in? Do you feel like they're putting out adequate content? Would you like to see them poaching people from other companies that put out MMO stuff that you like more? Like, what are your feelings about their ability to hire necessary for the player base that you're talking about?
I think they've got some of the better engineers. At least when you're looking like Star Citizen Live and Inside Star Citizen, I mean, the caliber of the discussions they're having and they're pretty top tier. I mean, I've certainly not followed any other projects that have kind of the deep thinking going on, and I'm personally pretty impressed. The only thing I would love to hear more of, but just kind of just vaporized, is the econ side of the house. Like,
oh God, you and every single person on the planet.
Like, when I first joined, there was a lot of conversation happening. We were hearing about, the NPCs, and they were showing us like this nervous system of the economy, and they had a name for it. I forget what the name was, and now
Quantum.
It's just like crickets. Yeah, quantum.
Constantly mistaken as quanta, but I won't get into that here. It's yeah.
That's the one area I would love to see more.
Really confused by that one. I agree with you there. Well, thank you for that perspective on that. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your whole conversation here. This was a great talk. If you want to let the folks know where they can find more of your talks and content before we sign off, that would be great.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks for having me on. Always love coming on here and talking about this stuff. I'm Grolo. On YouTube, youtube.com/@ Grolo-AF is where you can find my content.
Right, there's a hyphen in there.
Yeah, that's fine. We talk a lot about these more technical topics and do some deep dives. And Star Citizen is definitely the main focal point of the channel, but we follow what's going on in other MMOs, Ashes of Creation, PAX Day. And I just started doing some live streaming on Saturdays. So tune in,
Nice.
We can hang out. Last Saturday we had a big ice cream debate, while I was PvPing against some other orgs on a back of a player. So it's fun. Yeah.
Cool.
That's where you find me.
And how was what ice cream is best?
Oh my gosh.
You start the debate.
I published a short that has pretty much the whole debate on it. But I started it out just saying, hey, quick poll in chat, favorite ice cream. And it just turned into this zaniness of like, somebody was talking about like animal roadkill ice cream. And then we were talking about Polaris exhaust ice cream. It went totally off the rails. You got to check out the short. It was pretty hilarious.
All right, man. Well, on that note, thank you everybody for listening or watching. If you're on YouTube and you don't like the ads, I don't either. And that's why we post to the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, all the good places. Hop in there, maybe leave a review. Let us know what you think. Comments are appreciated. And send it to your Star Citizen friend nerds. We all need some more Star Citizen in our lives, of course. It's not eating into your waking and sleeping day. No, absolutely not. Either way, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you all. I hope you got some good information out of this, and maybe it expanded your mind brain a little bit to think a little more widely about Star Citizen. Again, leave your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what you think, and I will see you all next week.